Same thing with programming languages. What I see, in my experience when I'm doing interviews and everything, what I really care and what also I see around me is they want talent. They want people who understands, people who can solve problems. So it's not about the one programming language or the one cloud provider. Yeah, as you remember, I started working in Rocket Lab, and I worked there for 1 year. Only 1 year, but yeah, after that, I decided that I was too far away from home, from family and friends, and that's why I moved to London. But yeah, it was a very good experience. I really enjoyed it, but I have to say, it was a lot of work. Like, when I remember when I was doing the interviews, the first thing I was told is, here we have American working culture. So that means, which is long hours, and we expect you. One of the things that they did, not to kind of prove that if I was willing to work all these hours, they sent me the code test that I had to do at midnight, it was at like 11 p.m. or midnight. And I saw it and I was like, maybe I'll wake up early in the morning, I'll do it. But I was just very excited, So I couldn't really stop thinking about it. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna send it. So it took me a few hours. It was not a hard test. But it was in C, and it was a long time since the last time I was doing C++. So, you have to remember everything. For the last few years, I was using Windows instead of Linux, and now I had to do everything on Linux. So, it takes a bit of time to do that. So yeah, I just sent it back, and it went well. But one of the positive things that it counted for my interview is that, yes, I was working at midnight when the next day I had to wake up early and go to work and all that, but I was still doing it.
Launching a rocket into space. Like, what was your experience? If you're talking to someone, like, what would be the 2 or 3 things that you would say about that experience of launching a rocket to the space?
I have to say, of course, we were completely doing software. So I was not touching the rocket at all. Of course, there are engineers doing all that. But it was very exciting. There's a lot to learn because, of course, I'm a software developer. I have no expertise in any industry. So I was asking a lot of questions just out of curiosity. And of course, you need to actually understand the industry and what you are building to build better systems. But of course, you are never going to be like an aerospace engineer or like an industrial engineer, material engineer. You're never going to be one of those. I think the main thing was it was a super exciting industry. I was asking a lot of questions, and it was so interesting just to start learning about the space, maybe other people. Sometimes just simple things like understanding how things work. Like, for example, a rocket, when it's in space, it's traveling at a speed of maybe 40,000 kilometers per hour. So it's something like, wow, what? And when you first tell the people, anyone, they're going to be like, what? That's impossible. 40,000 kilometers per hour. But yes, there's no atmosphere. So there's no friction. So it's just like full on. And I don't know, those little things, then I was starting to understand that there are different orbits around the Earth. What happens if your satellite, for example, it's exposed more to the sun, or it's more on the shade, like on the other side. So on the one hand, you have more power from the solar panels, but on the other hand, the radiation out there is super destructive. So maybe your satellite will only last 1 or 2 years. While if
That's
you are more
amazing.
careful with the power, it will last for more years. And I don't know, it's little things, but you start understanding the business also, because there's the business of space, and you start really understanding and why things are happening. Or look, another piece of data that I find very interesting is, so the rockets are super heavy, right? But what is really heavy is the fuel. And when the rocket is the heaviest is when launching. But also the engines are the most important, because they are pushing with no inertia, they are pushing this rocket that is, I don't know, whatever, many tons, and it's pushing it up. But as it's going up, right, then the fuel is getting lower, so the weight goes down. And also the atmosphere, the gravity, it's less. So it's actually pushing more, because the engines of the rocket is just how do you call it? Well, the engines, the rocket itself, it's always pushing with the same throttle, with the same power. So because it weighs less, there's less gravity, then the power that is pushing up, it just goes, it's like exponential, right? So it's super important.
Amazing.
You know, the rockets, they have two levels, right? Level 1, level 2 stages. So it's very important to calculate that all the tank of fuel is consumed completely right before releasing the stage 1. Because that way, that last push with no weight, it's like, it just pushes the rocket. We were having all the expected, unexpected problems of a first launch. It happens with software all the time. Like the first release is like full of problems. So here it was the same thing, sometimes even worse, because with hardware, of course, you cannot just, it's like software, you put it up there and you have your testing environments and you have your staging, blah, blah, blah. You can have even your pre-production environment. But with a rocket, you cannot launch it. You can test it, and there are like test benches, but you cannot really launch the rocket. So everything needs to be perfect. Otherwise, you're gonna fail miserably. So it was delayed like 2 or 3 months, something like that. So with Brexit, rules have changed. And now, yes, because I was living here and working here before Brexit happened, I could just apply for this pre-settled status, this kind of a special visa for all Europeans that they were in the UK before Brexit, but less than 5 years. And there's this other one, settled status, or settlement status, something like that, which is if you've been in the UK for longer than 5 years. So for example, for me, next year, I can apply for the settlement status. And I think with that visa, then I can apply for a normal resident visa or something. But it has changed. Now it's a bit more complicated. Companies, if you want to come here, they need to sponsorize you. So that costs money. So yeah, it's not as easy as it used to.
Are you seeing companies open to sponsor visas for people that are not from UK?
Actually, my company, we are hiring people that we need to sponsor visas because we need developers. We need more technical people. The market is quite big, quite large here, and we need more developers. And the companies are constantly looking for talent. At the moment, we are building like a new version of our product, and it's going to be fully integrated in the cloud. So it's going to be based on Kubernetes. It's going to be use Kafka as the messaging system, and still very new. So at least we have that. I think probably in the future we will have some dashboards and some login. Probably we will use Elasticsearch for login. And yeah, at least
That's
for
cool.
now, this is what we have. We also code in Kotlin because, I mean, we are migrating this monolithic application, one single process application, into kind of a cloud architecture, you know, everything microservices connected with Kafka in the cloud. So of course we are still quite far away from production. So the stack is not really defined yet. This is what I'm saying in my company. For example, for cloud providers, maybe some companies, they are looking for experts on this or that, but a lot of companies, they are just looking for knowledge. If you are good and you really understand, because I think, for example, with the cloud, if you really understand cloud development and cloud architecture and how everything works, you can move from one cloud to the other, and they are kind of similar-ish, right? So you can apply the concepts that you know in one on the other, and that is gonna open you a lot more doors than if you just specify or focus on one cloud. Same thing with programming languages. What I see, in my experience when I'm doing interviews and everything, what I really care and what also I see around me is they want talent. They want people who understand, people who can solve problems. So it's not about the one programming language or the one cloud provider. So for example, we are working at the moment with Azure, but we want to migrate to Amazon, to the Amazon cloud. And we are using Kotlin, but we are hiring developers from any background really, because there are very few Kotlin developers that they are not just Android developers. I would say solid principles. Probably not being an expert, but understanding what is TDD and how to apply it. So I see that people get stuck on simple problems. And I think, of course, it's the pressure. So we are kind of measuring how do you work under pressure? Can you code simple problems with pressure? But really, and know how to use your tools, know how to use your IDE. You need to see, because for example, you are allowed in our interviews, you are allowed to Google whatever you want, but I'm gonna see how you Google. I'm gonna see how do you scan, how do you read the pages? Do you copy paste from Stack Overflow? Well, I don't like that. Or do you see the solution, you understand the solution, and then you implement your own solution? Do you find documentation on the web? How do you read those pages? Are you familiar with those pages? All that, it's a bit subjective, but all that information gives me, okay, how good coder you are. Are you a really coder? Or are you, yes, I like it, but I'm not the best. Yeah, sometimes they look very hard, but if you are by yourself and you have time to think, you realize that the problems that in the coding tests are really simple. But of course, there's a lot of pressure. Again, I was asking lots of questions to all the engineers because I need to specify one thing, which is I was not really working on McLaren's team. So okay. I was part of what it was called McLaren Applied Technologies. So we were kind of a different company. We were actually side by side. So I was having coffee with the other, with actual race engineers. But we were a different company because my team, we were developing this software, which is called Atlas 10, which is just a visualizer to read all the telemetry that is coming from the cars. So the team, okay. And we are selling that software, or we were selling that software to all other teams in Formula One. So of course, they are not gonna buy software from a different team. So
yeah, of course.
It was, like different companies within the same McLaren group, but one thing is racing and we were Applied Technologies. And it was, very similar. I was asking all sort of questions and, well, it's incredible the technology that the cars have. Like talking to the race engineers, like the World Cups, the driver who actually win the World Cup is the driver with the best engineers, because all the drivers are very similar. They are all super good. They're like robots. They do every single lap the same. So what really makes a difference is the car. So we did like a 2 days crash course on telemetry, and we were trying to understand better how the engineers use the data and how do you read that telemetry. So we did this 2 days crash course with race engineer, and he was telling us how they read the data and the typical things that they look at. So the race engineers, not just reading the data of the driver and comparing it with other laps, with other times, with other things, they can see, they could see that the driver was going through some personal problems. And actually, when they went and asked him, they found out that, well, he was just having a breakup with his girlfriend, or there was something going on in his personal life, and they could see it in the data. And actually, it's incredible how they can read the data. Just for example, with how the rotation of the wheels, they know if the car is overturning or over drifting or under drifting, or they know absolutely everything. It's amazing.